Tonight, live from the First Baptist Church of Houston, Channel 2 presents the Houston Christmas Pageant, The King. Brought to you in part by your Houston area McDonald's restaurants. It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's. Wilson Tender Cuts, tender, lean, juicy pork every time. And your neighborhood 7-Eleven store. Welcome back to the First Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. The 17th annual Christmas pageant is about ready for Act 2.
And if you enjoyed Act 1, you're going to love this act. Starts with King David, follows the royal line, ends to the resurrection of Christ, the King of Kings. There's lots of pageantry, colorful costuming, dancing, and lots of wonderful music.
So here's Act 2 of The King.
I, John, a disciple of the Lord, a brother, a fellow believer. I was a prisoner in exile on the Isle of Patmos because of the testimony of Jesus and the Word of God. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day when suddenly I heard a voice behind me that sounded like a trumpet, and it said, "Write what you see." And I saw him, and I fell at his feet as though I were dead. And he reached out his right hand and touched me and said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I who was dead am now alive forevermore. And I hold in my hands the keys to life and to death. Write what you see and what is to come." And I obey my God and my King. And I take a quill whose point is radiant with righteousness and dip it into the blood of the Lamb and write with words that can never be eradicated the sacred scarlet message that fills the white waiting pages. But how? Where do I begin? In the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that hath been made. In Him was life, and that life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never conquer it. This is a story of God and faith and people. It is the story of a man and a woman in a garden, and a serpent, and the loss of innocence, and a curse, and hidden in that curse, a promise that says that the seed of the woman shall grow, and he shall crush the serpent's head with his heel. And that promise has been carried on from generation to generation, that legacy from family to family, to Noah, to Abraham, to David, who wrote so eloquently of his descendant, the Messiah. People wanted a king, so God gave him a king. He gave him Saul, head and shoulders taller than all others, Saul. And you would think that Saul's son, the crown prince Jonathan, would have been the next king. But that was not God's plan. No. Instead of a prince, he chose a poet, a singer of songs, a tender of sheep. He chose the youngest of Jesse's sons. He chose David to be the future anointed king of Israel.
The Lord is my shepherd, no one shall I know. In pastures of green where the gentle winds blow, beside the still waters wherever I go. The Lord is my shepherd, no one shall I know.
And so God spoke to Samuel, his prophet, and said, Samuel, go to Bethlehem to the house of Jesse. Jesse is a man with many sons, and from amongst his sons I will choose a king, and I will designate the one to you that I will choose. So Samuel obeyed God and went to Bethlehem and carried with him a horn full of holy oil. And Jesse brought forth his sons, and Samuel looked at them. God spoke to him and said, Samuel, don't look for the tallest or the most handsome. Man judges from outward appearance, but I judge a man's heart. And the last son had been looked at. Samuel said, are these all of your sons? And Jesse said, well, there is one younger boy who's out tending sheep. Samuel said, send for him. We will not sit down until he comes. And God said, anoint him. This is he. And Samuel anointed David in the midst of his brothers. The Spirit of God descended on David from that day forward. And the boy David grew, became King David. He was the greatest king that the nation was to ever know. His influence spread throughout the known world. There is more written about this man than any other man in the scriptures. And scriptures say he is a man after God's own heart. His first great major accomplishment was to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant held within it the law that Moses brought down from Sinai, but more importantly, it represented God's presence in the midst of his people.